So last year, right around this time, I had what is now one of my favorite aesthetic treatments done, and I have to tell you guys all about it. So I remember scrolling Instagram and coming across a post from a local woman-owned business that showed a gnarly looking device hovering over a patient's face, and the caption read something along the lines of, "Now that boat season is over, get rid of the sun damage with our laser facial." I had heard of laser facials before, but I wasn't totally sure exactly what they were for. Then I saw the after photo of this business's patient, and I was shocked. Of course, I had to try it for myself, so I booked myself an appointment at Medicine-Based Beauty and never looked back. Medicine-Based Beauty is your go-to clinic for medical-grade aesthetic services that blend art and science. They offer Botox, fillers, laser treatments, microneedling, and wellness therapies. And they have highly trained professionals that tailor each treatment to enhance your natural beauty. With locations in Ithaca and Syracuse, Medicine-Based Beauty ensures safety and exceptional results for every client. Are you ready to start your beauty journey? Schedule your appointment today by visiting their website at medicinebasedbeauty.com or calling 315-920-0012. Elevate your beauty routine with Medicine-Based Beauty. You will not regret it. Are you a professional woman in Central New York looking to connect with a community that values local talent? Unlock your career's potential with the CNY Women's Network online business directory. For just $9 a month, you can enjoy a premier listing that connects you with a community of engaged customers, recruiters, and executives eager to discover you. Getting started is easy. Simply click the link in the show notes to purchase your listing, and your profile will be live within 72 hours. And one more thing, as a valued listener of the Cultivate CNY podcast, you get 20% off your first month with us. Just use the code Cultivate20 at checkout. That's 20% off your first month with the CNY Women's Network online business directory when you use the code Cultivate20 at checkout. Don't miss out on the opportunity to grow your career and attract new opportunities. Join the CNY Women's Network directory today to be seen, connected, and hired. Today we're here with Kera Wasserbach. I love her. I adore her. And she basically saved my life for this year's summit. She is an event coordinator, event planner who does work all around the country, and she specializes in the conference space and the retreat space. So I'm really excited about today's episode because I feel like it's going to give people a kind of a different lens to look through, if you will, in the world of events and looking at events strategically, especially for your brand and your business, and maybe even creating another revenue stream for your business through events. So this is really exciting. We're going to start off with your background, Kira. What led you into event planning, but more specifically into planning conferences and retreats?
Yeah, absolutely. So I grew up in a family where holidays were a big deal. So that I think is where a lot of the background comes from. Is just that feeling of safety and happiness when you get the right people in a room and you're just all just having a great time. But I was on a management career track and basically decided I want to start my own business. So I actually just made a list of businesses I would enjoy starting, and event planning was on there. I believed that I wanted to be a wedding planner, and then I was not that enthused by it. Luckily, at the same time that I was planning weddings, I came across an RFP, a request for a proposal for a conference coordinator, which I had never done before. Didn't even really know that this world existed, and just dove in and said yes. And it led me down a path of events, which I'll elaborate on possibly as we go further. But that led me into the coaching industry. And from my first coaching event, I just knew like, this is where I want to be. This is the space I want to be in, is these transformational experiences.
Yeah, so it's not like you are specializing in like the stuffy, Berkshire Hathaway like conference that is the same thing every single year. You're specifically working with people who are in the coaching space who are hosting more motivational sort of conferences.
Yeah. So I specifically work with personal development and professional development coaches and people who are just trying to create transformation through their events and help people to grow or excel at whatever they're looking to grow or excel at. So, whether that's just changing your life in general or finding your purpose, or whether it's a specific skill set, that's what I really thrive on, is working with those types of people that are trying to create that change in the world.
Who was your first client that kind of introduced you to the space?
Yeah. So I have to say, I was introduced to my first client from John and Nadia Melton. They are social media influencers, and I was actually blogging for them as I was building my business. And they introduced me to Bob Heilig, who is a professional development coach. And I did his event and it just like it blew my mind that this industry existed. Obviously we've all heard of like Tony Robbins and stuff, but unless you're in the world or you've experienced that firsthand, you don't really know what that stuff is all about until you actually see it happen. So once I got involved in it and saw it happen, I knew that that's where I wanted to be.
And what was your experience like even being at one of those events? Had you even attended one of those motivational conferences before?
I had never attended one. So I was I was mostly flying blind. Like I had delved enough into the industry just through those blogs and like watching their videos. So I knew what they would be teaching and I knew what it was kind of about, but I didn't know the strategy behind it. And there is such a different strategy when it comes to personal development and the coaching industry. So that was amazing. I wanted to learn it right off the bat, and all the information I just kept absorbing. He actually had a coach that came in specifically to consult for his event and tell him like certain things that he should do strategy wise. And so, as I delved deeper, I just started to really get inspired by that.
And what like give us a story of like maybe your favorite event that you've ever planned or hosted, or maybe like just something that really sticks out to you from your career because you've been doing this for 10 years.
Yeah. So I can't say that I have an absolute favorite event. I know that there's a couple coaches in the Scottsdale area that I work with, and I work with a collaborative partner with those. And those are some of my favorite events just because of they take a mix of the speaking on stage and the professional development and the personal development and the inspiration, and also modalities like breath work and things that kind of just open people up in workshops and exercises. I also really love doing retreats. Anytime I have a retreat, I feel like you're in such a focused environment that you can really see the change start to happen among the group. I would say that my most memorable event would probably be my first mastermind retreat with Bob, because that's the first time I saw all of this amazing personal development that I had watched on stage just a couple months before for the first time. I saw it happen in a smaller space, and I saw people have breakthroughs and really open up and truly take steps forward in what they were trying to accomplish. So that was a really inspiring experience for me.
Yeah. And let's go into masterminds a little bit because what is a mastermind and what is a mastermind retreat? What does that look like? What does that consist of?
Yeah, so a mastermind is basically just a focused group that is meant to help you excel in whatever your goals are for the next however long the container lasts. Most masterminds last anywhere from 6 months to a year. There are shorter masterminds as well, but usually that's the container. It's 6 months to a year, and you're working with a coach in a group of people who are all trying to accomplish some major activity in the next 6 months to a year. And a lot of like your typical mastermind in the coaching industry will consist of coaching calls, they'll consist of groups that give feedback and encouragement and work off of each other. And typically, if you're looking at a year, typically there's 3 retreats involved minimum. But sometimes there's just one retreat, and it gives you that in person container as well to really see that development and change and bond with the group.
Hey everyone, I want to take a moment and tell you about an incredible community that's making a real difference for women in Central New York. Are you a growth minded woman looking for a supportive and dynamic community? Look no further. The Collective by CNY Women's Network is built on core values that foster personal and professional growth, ensuring you have the support you need to succeed and live your best life. In the Collective by CNY Women's Network, we celebrate women's successes, collaborate on community initiatives, and create our own opportunities. We're committed to making Central New York a more dynamic and prosperous place to live and build our legacies. Whether you're an entrepreneur, a professional, or someone that's just looking to connect with like minded women, this community is here for you. It's a platform where women are seen, feel connected, and can make their dreams come true. Join the Collective by CNY Women's Network today and become a part of a community that's all about empowerment, growth, and making a positive impact. To join, you can visit cnywomensnetwork.com/join for more information and use the code Cultivate10 at checkout to get 10% off your first month or year with us. That's Cultivate10 at checkout to get 10% off your first month or year with the Collective. So join the Collective by CNY Women's Network today, and your journey to success will be celebrated and supported every step of the way. Let's get into retreats, because retreats and conferences, in some ways, they're very similar, but in other ways, they can be wildly different. I met you on a retreat that I attended, very intimate retreat hosted by Kim Fisher, and it was hands down one of the best retreats I've ever been to, because Kim does a really good job at not only, talking about the neuroscience behind motivation and change, but she also like gets you into your body and really like cracks you open in a way. And I feel like those modalities are so necessary when it comes to creativity. It's a whole other ballgame to be a business leader and understand business and understand how to manage people. But like to be a leader that's innovating, you need to be, making sure that you're doing the things and creating the space to be creative and to continue to innovate, right? But what do you think sets a retreat apart? Like, what do you think makes an average retreat a really, really good one?
Yeah, it's all about the flow and the itinerary. I mean, you obviously have to have a great leader. Like you said, Kim, she is an excellent coach and she knows how to really get deep into people and break them open. But a lot of that on top of that is strategy. And it's about creating the space for people to really be able to open up. So, one mistake I see people make with retreats is they will jam pack them full of content and people don't have time to breathe or, like you said, create. And when you do a modality that relaxes and opens up your mind, or you have a breakthrough, or you do some movement, or you even just have space to unwind, that's what creates those moments of creativity and inspiration, because you need the time to be in your thoughts and you need the time to really focus on yourself. And then the group aspect opens it up to sharing and changing and really fine tuning those ideas so that you can actually create the transformation that you want to see and support each other. I mean, that's what retreats are all about. It's about the group giving you feedback and just being there for each other as you go through this process.
Do you think that in terms of the size of the group of a retreat, do you think that there's kind of like a happy number that you usually see works the best? Because I could imagine that really large retreats don't really do too much. I think it's probably the more intimate situations where you're able to kind of relate to people and foster deeper connections. And, I think there's so much to learn from other people. So
Yeah, I agree. So it's all about structure. With a small retreat of 15 or less people, you're obviously going to get like that really intimate experience and that deep bonding, and you're going to be able to enact like a more deep transformation. But with larger retreats, the great benefit to that is that if you structure it correctly and you have small breakout groups, you can be introducing people to that maybe aren't familiar with the retreat space. Maybe they're not ready for that super intimate retreat. You can kind of show them what it looks like, and then you can have a separate retreat that's smaller and maybe a little bit more of an investment of their time, but it actually will get them to the next level and get them even deeper. So the important part of a small retreat is that you want the right people in a room, and you want that energy to stay in that container. So you want that it's an intimate environment, and those are my favorite retreats are the small ones. But the benefit to the large ones is that you can introduce people to that and you can kind of see who's a fit for the smaller retreat or who still needs the work that you can do in a larger setting of just like breaking out into these small groups, and maybe not because you're putting a lot of your emotions and energy when you're at a retreat. So if someone's never been to one, they can get a little overwhelmed. It can be exhausting, and there can be real burnout from that. So I think that's really my preference is the smaller, 15 or less retreats. But I see the great value in those larger retreats in bringing people into that space and kind of introducing them to that world because I think it's necessary too. have people start somewhere, you know?
Yeah, no, I totally feel that. I have noticed like being in a more intimate retreat setting where there really is like very concentrated work and development happening. Like I found that I needed an extra day just to sleep and decompress. Because, depending on the content, I think the emotional toll can be heavy a little bit. It just depends on what we're um kind of uncovering. But my first retreat was at Kripalu in the Berkshires, and that's like set up like it feels like you're on a college campus, like in a dorm. And I went alone, and most people, like I noticed, most people went in pairs or in small groups with other people. So other people were very social, but I was not. I was, like, not talking to anybody, and I found that, like, my second night there, I, like, voluntarily sat in the silent dining room, like, where you're not allowed to talk, because I was like, "This is what I needed." I needed to literally just be alone and just be alone with my thoughts, but also kind of there is something to the retreat space because you're able to, vibe off of other people's energy around you, and yeah, it can be a totally different experience depending on the retreat you attend.
Yeah, and I do recommend anyone who attends a retreat, whether it's a large retreat or a small retreat, take those moments to yourself, but be fully in the moment with other people while you have the opportunity, but always take a day afterward because you're going to be so inspired, you're going to be so kind of cut open and sewn back together and and have all these ideas and flow coming through, and you just need that day to decompress. You need to get back in touch with yourself, and you don't want to lose momentum, but having that one day to just let those thoughts process and settle, I think it's very, very important.
How does someone select what kind of retreat is right for them? And also, how does someone figure out if the retreat is even like gonna be a good retreat, good experience? Because a lot of these are huge investments, both time and money.
My best bit of advice would be if it calls to you, get on a call with the organizer. That if there's not if the host or someone on their team is not willing to get on a call with you, because if it is a high ticket retreat or a lot of investment, you want to be able to talk to them and see what it's all about. And you'll know by talking to the person that's guiding the retreat or someone who's going to be attending or has attended the retreat. You'll know if it's for you. It's a gut instinct. And if you feel that you want to attend and you're attracted to it, take the step because as long as it's something that feels right for you, you're going to get so much out of it.
And when there's like so many different retreats that you can attend. Like, let's talk about the silent retreats. Have you ever organized one of those?
I
I,
haven't. And
I'm so curious about doing like a 7-day silent retreat. I have a girlfriend who did that in Hawaii, and I was like, but she's also like, so she's like lives in the stratosphere. She's very airy. So she's like totally into that stuff, but I don't know if that would be for me. But basically, what have you noticed when people host their first event, their first retreat? Like a first time retreat host, what are kind of the common challenges or struggles you see people face with that?
larger events and retreats are so different. So there's different challenges that come with either. I would say with retreats, the biggest challenge people face with their first one is knowing who's going to be attending and how to fill it. That's a common question that people have. Usually you have one or two people like, I know this person's going to be there. This is for them. I designed them this with them in mind. But, traditional marketing doesn't always work to fill retreats. So it's a lot about personal reach out. And like I said, getting on a call, talking to people, telling them, hey, I think this is for you, and having the courage to do that. And just going like in any event, going all in. Events are a different strategy, just like you get coaches that, okay, I created this course and I was so inspired that I created it in 2 days and I got a professional filmmaker and I went all in and I did all these things to promote my course and I invested this much in ads. And then they get their first event and they're like, I want to, you know, just really create this retreat and I'm so excited about it, but maybe they're not all in yet, or maybe they get distracted by the other things going on. And that's why it's so important to create an entire flow for your business that incorporates all those aspects to your and flows your events to your retreats. So, long story short, I think the biggest thing that people struggle with retreats is just making sure that it's a very top priority, and that's the struggle they have when planning. And then just once you get into the planning process, people really feel their way into it. I think it's important to consult people and to have a very intentional itinerary and to know what parts of the day need to be filled with activity and what parts need to be a little more relaxed. And that's very important in the planning process. Knowing how to negotiate venues and find the right people to support your retreat. But other than that, I think most people, when they get to the content creation part of the retreat, that seems to be the least struggle that they have because once they get started, they feel the flow and they know what the group is needing.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point you made, though, about the marketing behind hosting these events. Because, I mean, if you are a business owner and you are relying on that retreat to bring in a pretty good sized amount of profit for your business for the year, that's a product in and of itself that you sell in your business. That's a revenue stream that you rely on. So it's important to make sure you're filling those seats, but selling a high ticket mastermind with 3 retreats throughout the year is totally different than selling, a $20 lip gloss that you can, just ship to the customer as soon as
Absolutely.
possible. So,
Yeah.
and like I personally, we just launched a members card, and it was technically like our first physical product that we've launched, and we've done nothing but events so far, really. So I really noticed, I'm like, oh yeah, this is a totally different ball game, totally different strategy, totally different like way I need to approach selling this than I typically approach what I sell.
Absolutely. And so I'm of the mindset that everything should flow into the next level when you're especially with coaching because you're helping people embark on a journey. So when you're doing a larger, you should always be offering people a next level to get more intimate. So let's say your first event is a retreat, then at the end of your retreat, you might want to have a more advanced retreat that you're offering them. And so that's how you really make it profitable. Like from the business perspective is a lot of people's goal on their first retreat is just to be able to break even at the retreat. And then at the end of the retreat, there's some other way that they can work with them. And that's also the case for larger conferences. Like if you're talking about an enrollment event, you're investing your time and money in creating this event to inspire people and to help them. And they should take away from that event some kind of really amazing transformation. But there should also be a level for them to get deeper that you can offer them. And that's how you kind of create that profitable margin in your business. And then, eventually the events themselves will become the income. But when you're starting out, you really want to just always have somewhere else to lead them so that you're creating this experience. You're making sure that you're not too focused on the profit margin of it because you want the audience experience to be the priority, because that's how you create long lasting relationships with your audience. And that's when you can start to bring them into your higher end masterminds where they get 3 retreats a year, or into your higher ticket retreats where let's say you have a retreat that is 20 people and that's a lower price point and you do some introductory work and you open them up and you get them inspired, and then the follow-up retreat is something where it's in a tropical location or it's just really intense work and you're actually enacting all these practices that you opened up and discovered on the initial retreat. So
Yeah. And this is really what you're starting to lean into with your career is like you still help coordinate a ton of events across the country, but you really are starting to dive into that strategy part of it. And you've seen it. I mean, you've worked with like top-notch coaches and people in the self-development world, and it's true. Like I've only scratched the surface on all this stuff, and it's like it's a sales funnel. Like that's what you're doing. So if you're going to be making the investment, not only, resources, but time and energy and effort, because hosting a conference and a retreat is no joke on your mental health. You need to make sure like you're beginning with the end in mind. Is like, why are we hosting this? What is the next level? Like there needs to be some real strategy behind it. When we originally first host the summit, it was like just one of those things that I wanted to do because it was a good opportunity for me professionally. But now it's like we're creating a business, and how do I actually, make sure that this is a sustainable thing for us to do every year? And so that leads me to my next question. What are some strategies for actually managing budgets for events like this and making sure that they are financially profitable, but also not compromising that user experience?
You always want to start with your expenses. And the biggest thing that I recommend to people is to check out venue pricing before you advertise your retreat. So have a venue in mind, or at least have an area in mind, and know what the cost of that's going to be before you start promoting the retreat. And venue sourcing is a pretty intense job. Like, it's one of the main things that I do logistically is negotiate venue contracts, make sure that the venue is the correct type of venue for the retreat or the conference, especially with conferences, because you're committing to a pretty big like investment in that conference. So if you can't negotiate the contract properly, you could be stuck with a lot of hidden expenses. So that's one of the biggest things, is finding out venue costs, finding out food cost. And then you can kind of go from there as far as advertising and setting your ticket prices. So you always want to set a budget estimate before you set your ticket pricing. And I think a lot of people say, okay, I'm going to do this retreat. I want it to be, you know, $1,200 a person, and we'll plan from there. And I think that's backwards. You need to plan from your cost first and then set your ticket pricing. And that way you're covering yourself, and you want to make sure that your team is covered, that you're able to hire the people to make it a great experience. So have all that in your budget first, and then set the price point and say, okay, is this price point realistic for the audience that I have? If not, where can we trim? Or am I ready for this type of retreat yet? And what could I do to build up to this if I'm not? So it's all about just knowing what you're going to spend, and then assessing your ticket costs and what it's going to take to get there. So don't lower your tickets just because people can't afford them. Just say, okay, what do I have to do to get people here?
Yeah, that's a really good point. Is like, how do you actually then attract the right kind of customer, especially if you are new and starting out? Maybe this is the first retreat your brand is hosted and you don't have that credibility yet. I know you said that reaching out to people personally is actually a really great strategy for events like this, but is there any other like digital marketing strategies that you have seen that actually worked when attracting people for a high ticket sort of event?
Partnerships are great. Bring in, a guest speaker with a great following, or like select ambassadors. Like I know you did that with the CNY Women's Summit. Having people that, can help promote and are just passionate about your mission and what you're trying to do, and will share it with people. And digital marketing, yes, you could do, but I think it's more about event build-up marketing. And so I think one of the biggest mistakes people make is they say, okay, I have this great online following and this great digital marketing, and that's going to fill my event. If you're not ready, if your audience isn't ready for that and they're not primed for that, then you may not get the response that you want. So let's say I'm having a retreat and I'm looking at my price tag, and it looks like the kind of experience I want to offer is going to be $2,100. So maybe my audience isn't ready for that. So maybe I'll do a couple virtual events or some online challenges to get them primed and ready. Who's showing up? Who's coming to those? Who's taking the time? Because those are your potential retreat people, is the people that are taking the time to invest in those events and showing up. And then maybe you want to have a couple in-person events building up to it as well, that are just a one day or a brunch or just some kind of meetup. And those people that see you in person and work with you in person, those are your top people, right? Those are the people that are going to show up for events. And when you call them and say, hey, I'm having this retreat, this is the experience, they're going to go, well, yeah, sign me up because I love going to your events. And then same with those larger conferences, prime people first to get there.
How do people prime? Like, what are kind of, I've noticed this on social media where I can tell when I'm being primed for something, but like in the coaching space, what do you think a lot of coaches like to do on their social media to kind of prime their audience for what's coming?
Yeah, I think it's all about observing your audience. I mean, I'm not a digital marketer. I can only give my experience from what I've seen and what I've seen work. But I think online challenges are great. Anytime you can get people into a private group, you know that those people are more interested in what you're doing. So putting out content, being available, that will build your online audience. But if you want to know who your event audience is, it's just getting them to move into private spaces. So if someone buys your course, it's like, okay, do they get a discovery call after that? Do they show up for the call? Do they get put into a group where they can interact? Who's engaging? And then it's about events themselves. Like, okay, am I holding an online challenge and seeing who shows up to that? Or am I going to hold, if I'm looking to build an event locally, am I going to hold like a dinner or something and see who shows up to that? Those are your people that want to show up. So you're priming them mostly by just gauging who's showing up. And once you have, let's say, a 2 hour event or a 1 day event where you have a certain amount of people show up, then you know that you're ready to do that higher ticket event where people can sign up for that experience. So, unless your audience is already there, it's all about your knowledge of your own audience. But if you feel that something is too high, the goal is to get them to that price point, not to lower the price point and underserve them.
Yeah, and I think it's easy to get like stuck in the hamster wheel of, okay, I have this thing to sell. All I have to do is figure out a really strong social media campaign and it'll sell. But it's really like paying that very close attention to who's paying attention and kind of probably cultivating that relationship with those people one on one or directly and kind of inviting them into your circle or whatever you have going on. What are some common challenges most often faced with these large scale conferences?
Challenges that I've seen, well, hotel contracts are and venue contracts are a big one. That it's something I talk about a lot, but I can't stress it enough that I've seen so many people get caught up in, oh, okay, well, this is what they charge, so this is what I'm going to do. And they're not aware of the things that are normal in the industry that they could receive in exchange for that. And so they leave money sitting on the table in that aspect. Large events are a lot of time and money investment, and you have to be ready for that. You have to be prepared. You have to make sure your audience is ready for that. So that's a big one as well. And you just have to go all in. If you're doing a large conference, like you have to be committed to it. You have to be aware that this is going to be a big commitment of your time and your energy, but you are going to be building lifelong clients and get past the first event. The most common thing that I see in the coaching industry is people do one big event and they get so burnt out by it. And even if they make a big profit, they're like, well, I've been doing this stuff online and that also makes a profit. So I'm not going to do one next year. And once you get past that second event, once you have that second event, you have a lifelong event. It's just that first one that always kind of they get nervous about it or they get regretful about it or think that they can build it somewhere else. And they can, but it's not the same type of audience. If you have an audience that shows up for you, they're never going anywhere. So it's really important. I think live events are very important in any coaching sphere. And it's really how you can, like, if your goal is to really create true transformation and truly help people go along this journey to change their lives, then that really is the way to reach them.
Yeah, no, I agree. Like it's there's only so much that can happen in a digital space and we all like know this already, but it's the live events that I think I think that's what, like, sells someone on you, you know what I mean? Like, you can have an impression of someone and their online presence, but if someone, like, really buys into you in person and they see how you hold yourself and interact with others, like, they're loyal clients for life, I'm sure. Okay, so let's talk about some trends that you've noticed in the conference space. I feel like the conference industry has like absolutely boomed since the pandemic because I think there's a lot of people that want to do more meaningful work. So I think there's actually more people in the coaching space now. But I think people are just hungry to like get out there and connect again and get things going. So what have you noticed in the past probably like 4 years in the conference industry? What's changed?
Yeah, people want this more intimate conferences. So even if it's a large conference and you're filling the room with 400 people, you want to have those opportunities for smaller breakouts. You want to have that opportunity for intimate connection. Decor staging wise, it's a totally different. Like people want aesthetic staging. Uh, it used to be a very like flashy, bright lights production, and you still want the perfect lighting, the perfect production company. You want a company that understands the flow of your agenda and can work with it. But you also want many of the hosts and many of the attendees want to see more of this like three-dimensional, like, how we're sitting here with the chairs, how you had it at your summit, more decorative, more pretty. Conferences are getting prettier. They're using a lot of decor that used to be considered more like wedding decor for conferences. So aesthetically, that's a big change is people really want to create these. And I think it's all about that intimacy once again. I think it's that feeling of you walk into a beautiful space and you feel like your speakers are talking to you on a stage that is maybe a little lower set to the ground and has a more living room type environment or a prettier backdrop. It makes you feel more connected to the stage. And I think that's what it's all about since the pandemic is just connection and creating those spaces for that. So I think that's the biggest trend I've noticed is that there's just more of an intimate feel to conferences now instead of you're looking up at the speaker and you're just dazzled and awed by them. And that is a really like you need that level of inspiration and hype, to get people excited and to get people engaged, but you also want to have that intimate feeling. And there's a lot more sharing going on at conferences. So people want to hear people's breakthroughs. They want to have Q&As. They want to feel like they're connected from the stage to the audience. And in the past it's always been the stage is untouchable and the audience is there to observe. Now the audience is there to engage.
Yeah, no, that's huge. Like there's less separation between the coach and the customer, which is incredible. I've noticed that too. There's a lot more like Q&As, which is really smart because a lot of these people that are attending these events, especially if they're more of like a networking conference, like they're there because they want to be seen. So what better way to be seen than like getting up on a mic, introducing yourself in your business and then asking a really great question that is going to stand out to the speaker as well.
Yeah, and I think it's important for the speaker to have, and this is where strategy comes in again, and having an event coordinator or even having like an assistant that can help create that division in space. Because with these more intimate events, there's a lot higher chance of burnout, and you've got to commit like 2, 3 days of your energy and your whole soul to this room. So you need to have those spaces where you have your separation and making the audience feel connected to you while still allowing yourself that space so you can fully deliver is really, really important.
Yeah, and I think it's also interesting about like the actual kinds of stages that are happening now at these conferences and like the kinds of spaces that are being formed. Like I really wanted to go to the like South by Southwest one in Austin this year because there's some really great people speaking. And one of my favorite influencers, Melissa Wood Tepperberg, she's actually from Syracuse, but she's like a wellness influencer. She has her own app, but she really has just gotten into like motivational speaking and doing more keynotes, which is great. But I noticed like her keynote at South by Southwest, it looked like it was in a very, very intimate room, and the stage was literally not even maybe a foot off the floor, like, it was, like, a very intimate space, and I don't know why, but I was surprised by that. I almost felt like I don't know if maybe I feel like she would wanna separate herself more from the audience, or maybe the actual, like, company would want to. I don't know. I just was, like, taken aback, but then I started to wonder and, like, get curious of, like, obviously this is intentional because South by Southwest is, like, one of the biggest conferences in the country, I think. But, yeah, that's really interesting. But, of course, the stage design was absolutely stunning, and it feels like you're in someone's house, though. You know, it's very cozy, and I do think, like, the stage design is so important, especially if you are a brand hosting an event like this, because it gives you another chance to let people experience the brand. Like, what is this brand? What does this feel like? So, yeah, it's like experiential marketing is what I call it.
Yes,
You're
I
like
agree.
giving people a taste for what it means to be a part of this.
And that's what it's all about, is just creating community. And so when you have your stage branded more specifically to you, because people will go to an event and they'll go, I want that. Like,
Just because
you
of the
know,
stage design,
yeah,
right? Like,
it's a speaker they admire, or it's, someone that they idolize or have learned from. And they go, I just want to do exactly what that person did. And you don't want to do exactly what that person did. You can do a lot of what that person did, but you want to create your own brand and your own backdrops and your own branding on stage, and you want it to feel like you. So don't get caught up in that, wow, that was such a production and I just want that feeling. You can create that feeling by blending the two aspects. You can blend that living room, homey, branded, pretty feeling with the lights and production and staging. And when it comes together like that, it's beautiful.
mhm. So what is next for you, Kira? Like what do you have up your sleeve for 2024?
Doing a lot more strategy, like you said. I'm trying to work with coaches on just a more intimate level, and I know that word has come up so much during this episode, but it's so important to me to really connect with my clients and to feel like we're creating real change. So I want to work with people who want to build their entire event strategy. The one off events, I still logistically plan, but I really love working with people on a longer term basis. And I want to be talking to you at least a couple times a month and checking in with you and seeing what's going on rather than, okay, well, I'll call you in 6 months.
And especially in this space, like the professional development space, like there needs to be so much authenticity, but at the same time so much strategy. And I think that if you are a creative business leader that is like a lot of people are the talent. A lot of people are the face of the brand and they're the ones getting on stage and speaking, but like in order for the business to sustain, you need to have that really strong strategy in place. So having someone like you that's been in it for 10 years and has seen it all, I could imagine would be huge. I'm like, we're going to talk after this, Kira.
Yeah, no, I'm excited about it because I use the word strategy, and there are tried and true strategies that work, but it's also about the individual and what they want to create. And I think that that's the missing piece, is when you work with someone on a regular basis and you start to realize what they're trying to achieve and how they can sustain that goal, like, and create the income and flow to be able to serve. That's what is important to me. That's what lights me up. And so I just want to get there with them and work with them to make sure that they're always being authentic and representing themselves in the way that they do things and the way that they do their events, and just helping them to serve their audience in a better way and in a way that doesn't drain them, because that's what can happen if you don't really have that strategy in place.
Yeah, I could imagine that. Like after this summit this year, I was shocked by how drained I was and like what happens to you afterwards. Like the dopamine crash it's gnarly. It was just I was like, "Whoa." It's happened every single time. This was our third one, but this year in particular was a full day event. it was much more, there's a lot more layers to it, than ever before. So I can totally understand that. And after the fact, I was like kicking myself because you need to be like in this for the long game. It can't just be like something that you execute really well and then you say, okay, now what? There needs to just be that follow up so you can continue moving forward. Cause I felt stuck afterwards. Like I felt like stuck. And then I was like, okay, how do we start again?
Yeah. Because we call it the post-event hangover, and you get kind of unmotivated for a week or two. Not unmotivated, but you're just a little burnt out. And so that's why the post-event strategy is so important to have in place before the event, because you're going to need that to self-execute for a week or two, because you just won't, not that you won't have the energy, but you will be
In
not
another
at your
place.
100%. Yeah, you've just served an entire room of people for days.
Yeah.
Like yeah.
And I think I mean, when you see other people do it and you also, maybe if you like I have this like narrative where like I grew up on a stage, you know what I mean? So I really went into it thinking like, oh, I'm just gonna get up there and talk and do what I do and then everything will be fine. And I was so humbled after the fact. I'm like, no, no, no. This needs to be like, I need to go in with a plan because personally, for my energy, like I need to budget to be able to be like on autopilot for I think 2 weeks afterwards at least. Cause I thought, okay, like first day after this kind of sucks. It's definitely an event hangover, but I didn't imagine that I was going to feel like brain fog and a lack of motivation for like 2 weeks. And I'm like, dang, this was only one day. This is just a one day event. I'm a rookie.
Yeah, well, it you're not a rookie. It happens to every event host. And one of the things that I'll see people do, and it's a lot of expended energy, but that week after is having like follow-up calls, and the amount of energy that takes is just colossal. But it is. It's like you have people book, and then the goal is to book them on these discovery calls so that they can talk about the event experience and possibly join whatever you may have offered at the event. So it's important, but it's also just got to be strategically done and set up where they can self book, where you don't have, you can just get on and do your thing. Cause, and any emails that are going on, schedule them before the event, because you're going to have that lag.
Okay, so if someone wants Kira to save their business or make their business or launch their business basically in this event space, how can they reach you?
I think the best way is honestly to follow me on Instagram at Traveling Event Planner. And there's a link in my bio where you can literally just book like a half-hour consultation, and just get to know each other and chat and see how we can work together. Do you need someone to help coordinate your event, or do you really just need advice and strategy?
I'll be sure to leave a link to your Instagram in the show notes. I'll also leave your email address if that's all right.
Yeah, absolutely. Kira at travelingeventplanner.com. I'm always checking my email, so that's a great way to reach me as well.
I love that. Well, Kira, thank you so much for joining me for the Cultivate podcast. It was an absolute pleasure. I'm so excited to continue working with you, and I cannot wait for next year's summit.
Thank you.
All right, guys, that is it for this week's episode. Thank you so much for tuning in to Cultivate CNY. If you enjoyed this episode, I would love it if you left us a review and make sure you're subscribed to the show. Speaking of the show, if you know anyone or if you are interested in being our next guest on Cultivate CNY, be sure to submit us an application. You can just click the link in the show notes. And if you're a business owner that's interested in getting in front of our audience, you can go ahead and email us at podcast@cnywomensnetwork.com to learn more about sponsorship and advertising opportunities. All right, that's it for now. I'll catch you guys next Monday.